You're listening to the Kim D. Snyder Podcast, episode number 34. In this episode, you will discover it's time to experiment and fail.
Welcome to the Kim D. Snyder Podcast.
Welcome to the Kim D. Snyder Podcast. I'm your host, Kim. This is the podcast for executives and leaders who want to discover strategies to leverage expertise, mindset, and innovation for more success and joy. To get the show notes, go to kimdsnyder.com/034. Thank you for spending time with me today. Let's get this party started. And the party is about how to experiment. And there's 3 points that I want to cover, which is why now, it's okay to fail, and areas to look at for ideas and inspiration. Okay, why now? Why not now? This is actually something that should be happening regardless of where we're at in the economy. If we're in a pandemic, if we're in a recession, if we're in a natural disaster, I believe innovation and experimentation should always be happening. So it doesn't matter what's going on. And, it doesn't matter if it's internal forces and maybe there's some strife in an internally within the organization, or maybe there's, strife externally, such as PESTLE. PESTLE is looking at external factors, and it's an acronym, PESTEL, and it stands for political, economic, social, technology, environmental, and legal factors. And I'll put a link below so you can look at it. But it doesn't matter what the reason is that the disruption is happening. If you can start to exercise that muscle, it will help you so that it's just a regular part of your routine and your organization's routine, and you can make sure that you're experimenting and innovating. Second point is it's okay to fail. And the only way you're going to fail is if you start doing or acting. And when you start acting or doing, it is a way for you to spark ideas and creativity in others. And if you don't start, it's never going to happen. You can never wait for the perfect moment, because just the act of actually doing it is going to solve it. I usually say, action solves about 80% of your questions. And in this point, you don't really know what the answer is, and so you might as well start. I look at the Tesla battery and 3D printing for inspiration. So for example, Tesla, the car, has an amazing battery, and I like to see how he's innovating the battery, because if it works or it doesn't, we're all going to win, because if it works, then that's cool. There's great cars out there, and that battery power can be used for other items. If it doesn't work, then that battery technology and development and R&D, I believe, is going to be utilized someplace else. And so, he's gotten it way down in size. He's gotten it way more longer life. And I think somebody else could take that and run with it, regardless if the Tesla works out. Same thing with 3D printing. It is relatively new, but regardless if it works or not, the fact that somebody's trying it, and maybe they can use it in something else. Maybe it's going to be, 3D food. Maybe we're going to have smell-o-vision at one point. I think Emerald said that. But, if you don't start somewhere, you've got nothing to build on except where you were before. So every time you start something, you get to build up. Third area that I really like to look at is how do we start? And I've just got 3 simple tips for you to start. And one of them is looking at other leaders or experts from industries that are completely different from you. So go study and see what they're doing. Can you repurpose a way that they're doing a product or service? Can you leverage their delivery model? Can you look at their solution that they're doing, and can you borrow that approach for a similar problem or issue that you're having? So I like that idea. Then you can look at supply chains. Is there something that this company, this other industry leader, is using in their supply chain? Something that they've done upstream, downstream from you? And not only that, can you do it? Is there areas in your current supply chain that you could look at? And then the third idea to start right away is do the opposite. So if you provide short-term solutions, look at long-term. If you look at, if you provide in-person solutions, look at virtual or offline. If your product or service is good for one, how do you make it for many? If your color is white, can you do it for black? So you get the point, but could you turn it around for whatever reason and start looking at it from that idea? I guess the bonus tip that I have is, and I mentioned this earlier though, is you should always be experimenting. So not just times of disruption, but exercise that muscle. It's like exercising the marketing muscle, exercising your physical muscles. The more you exercise it, the more you can create and the better the ideas and the experimentation comes. The action items I have for this podcast or video, however you're consuming this, is start. Just start and, share what you want to do and invite people to join and start those meetings and start innovating, start experimenting on those areas and just see what happens. The second thing that you can do is, in order to experiment, you have to fail. And one of the most important permissions you're going to have to give to fail is probably yourself. And if you can fail, then you're okay, and make sure that you and your team are okay to fail, because that's when the experimentation will happen. And then the third one is pick an industry leader from something that is completely different from your industry. So I'll provide a list of industries to give you an idea, and you can look at some of those areas, but look at that and just pick something that you think would be so not related and see how you can leverage that. To get the show notes for this episode, please go to kimdsnyder.com/034. Thank you for listening to this episode. It's time to experiment and fail. Please leave a review on iTunes and share with a friend or colleague that could also benefit by this by going to kimdsnyder.com/iTunes. See you in that next episode.